started recording.
Okay.
And we should be going live soon. Okay, you say hi first, okay? Because I always say hi first. All right, we're going live. 3, 2, 1. Hello.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Happy Tuesday.
Welcome to Down the Rabbit Hole with Lin and Jada. Yep.
Yeah. How's everyone? This is our 4th episode of Down the Rabbit Hole. If this is your first time here with us, welcome. If you've been with us on previous episode, thank you for coming back again. Happy to see you here.
So Down the Rabbit Hole is an inner work series for coaches. We are coaches. We've been coaching for many years. And one of the, if it's one thing that we will swear by in terms of becoming a confident, competent coach is that you need to do inner work, because we bring so much of who we are into our lives as coaches. That's the ironic thing. But when you're with a client, you're supposed to take out who we are, right? So where do we find this balance to strike a very neutral ground where we use our space and our skills to enable somebody else to find their answers and their truth is where the importance of inner work comes in. Yep. So Jada, yes, what are you going to say?
I think what makes the difference between a coach who just knows how to use the skill versus a coach who's really with all his or her presence there, right, is that they have done their work, that they've done their inner work, and they've gone through that transformation of change within themselves, which then lends them that power to be able to step into that space of change for another person. So Down the Rabbit Hole really is a talk show for coaches where we come together, me and Lin come together to discuss about a topic and for us to examine that deeply so that we can begin to unpack and unravel the things that we don't normally talk about.
Yeah, so we invite all of you to tumble down the rabbit hole with us. We have an idea what we're going to talk about, but a lot of it is, it's going to be what happens in a moment as well. And tumble down in terms of explore with us, look within yourselves. We want to do this together collectively, because when we're left on our own, it's sometimes very difficult. We kind of stop ourselves to look deep within. And of course, sometimes, most of the time, our environment doesn't allow us to talk about important life topics, conversations, right? So this is our space as coaches to do this.
Yep.
Okay, what are we talking about today?
Freedom! So why is freedom? Why this topic? And what do we mean by freedom? Lin, take us off. Why freedom? Why did we suddenly decide to talk about freedom today?
So much of a human being's search is for freedom. Like, think about all the reasons why we do what we do is so that at the end of the day, we can feel free. We can obtain freedom.
Yeah. So the freedom that we are talking about this evening, right, is not the dancing and prancing about in the open field type of freedom. It's not the skinny dipping in the ocean type of freedom. Sure, those are moments of freedom, but the ones that we really want to talk about is how do you assess freedom on an everyday basis? How do you tap into freedom every single day of your life so that it's within your reach whenever you want it, and not only when we have time for that, when we have a vacation slot and then we can be free. So the freedom that we really want to talk about is the type that you can assess on an everyday basis.
Yes. So who is with us tonight? Can you say hi in chat? We see Harry. Hello, Harry.
Hey, Harry.
Who else is with us on the show? Can you say hi? So we know who's joining us. And while that happens, the first session, this is our 4th episode. So the first episode was on fear, facing fears. The second episode was where we talked about the good friend of fear, which is self-judgment, and how they come hand in hand to stop us from jumping into what's really, truly purposeful and meaningful for us. The third episode, we talked about dreams, and we unpacked life, what's behind a big life dream or a childhood dream, and how our dreams hold our true gifts to the world. And Jada dedicated this really beautiful song by Billy Joel called The River of Dreams. And so we talked about how episode 1 and 2 was about, what stops us standing on the banks and afraid of going into the river. Right? Episode 3 was presencing that there is a river of dreams, and if we truly want to be at our most useful, most powerful self for the world, we need to jump into that river and, and let that journey take us and unfold that, right? So today we talk about freedom and how it relates, when we are able to flow with the river of dreams, we express freedom in who we are. Okay.
So who do we have here with us? Harry's here.
I only see Harry, but there are other people watching, so maybe they're shy. It's okay. So we'll be using chat. It's interactive. We'll be using chat, and we'll be discussing the topic as we go along. Okay. So maybe let's talk about why is it important for us to assess this freedom on an everyday basis. Okay, we like what Jada said. We're not talking about the very stock photo kind of freedom, like you Google freedom and then you have all these people jumping into the air. Yes, that's nice, but we want to really empower everybody to be free every day. Right, Jada, you spoke about it's not the kind of freedom that you get when you have finally achieved something. That's something that we were all brought up with, right?
Mm-hmm. And also, right, adding on to that, it's also not that kind of freedom that, a lot of people think that, they are free or they can access freedom when they go on a holiday, when they're on a vacation, when they're taking a break from their day-to-day life, then they are free. So that's not the kind of freedom that we are talking about, because that's not really true freedom, right?
True, good point. That's like escapism.
Yes, definitely. Yes. But most of us, we don't think about it that way because we've been so conditioned to look forward to that holiday, to look forward to that summer vacation where we can free to, do whatever we want, whether it's snooze all day long, lay at the beach, read a book, doing things that we love. But people don't usually think that they have the freedom to do that every day.
The trap that we have all been brought up in is exactly, what you're saying, which is you must wait for something to happen, or you must wait for you to have achieved something and then you get freedom. Right? I think that's something that we can all relate to, right? You study hard, get a good school, get into a good school so you can get good grades. I don't know how it's related, but yeah. All right, get good grades, you get employed by a good company, you get a good title, you get a good brand, a good CV, and then you somehow get promoted and then you earn all this good money to buy a good car and a good house. And then somehow when you have all that, you then marry a good spouse and your life would be perfect. Right? And then you achieve freedom. So, we all know people who work so hard and they say, yes, I earn all this money so that I can retire. One day I can retire. And by the time you retire, you have like health problems, right? Because you're 60, 65, 70. Like, no, that's not life.
Yeah, so whatever you just described, right, sounds like it's a constant chasing, like a blind chase for something at the end of the road, right? Like you're trying to like go after something, and you have to like sacrifice a lot, right? And just so that you can reach that pot of gold at the end of the road. But that journey to get there sounds like frustrating, right? It sounds as though it's like the world closing in, right? You're trapped, you're stuck in that chase to access that pot of gold.
Yeah. I can totally relate to that. If I think back to the moments in my life, and after giving birth is one, but even like a couple of months ago when everything is just I'm juggling a lot of things, and in order to kind of keep everything afloat, that I need to have a lot of that control. And I spoke about this 2 episodes ago, this need for control. And the more I need things to be in control, the more anxious I get, the more pressure I feel. And then when things don't go according to what I need or what I want, then it adds on. So it's this whole, I just feel like I'm getting swallowed up by my world, and it's all so in my mind, my head. So my husband just says one thing and it triggers me the hell off, because I'm just on the edge all the time. So it's really not a good feeling to not be free. And we're talking about the kind of freedom where despite so many things going on, right? Despite pressure and stress, we can still access that kind of freedom so that we just don't go crazy.
Can the people who's watching right now be able to relate to what we are talking about? That kind of freedom that you are the freedom that we're talking about, right, is not the kind of freedom that is at the end of the road, that pot of gold that we're trying to get. But that freedom to be able to, that freedom that you can tap into at any point of time that you want in your life, so that you're not trapped by that chasing, you're not trapped by that constant going after of a goal, a dream, a pursuit.
Yeah, that pot of gold. That's what we're all brought up to believe, right? So the question is, can we access that pot of gold even if we are not there?
So what is this chasing driven by? What do you think, Lin? What do you think all this chasing is driven by?
Internal standards. We envision ourselves to be a certain person, to be somewhere, to have something. Yeah. I think that's one. Yes, which is then also set by external people. Could be parents, it could be the profession or friends.
You know, as you say this, I recall how when I was in my 20s, I mean, sometimes I still have this issue creeping up for me, right? So I'm somebody who used to constantly compare myself with others, right? So I'll look around me and then I'll see, wow, this person is able to do X, Y, Z. And then I'll look into myself and say, shit, I'm still not able to do that, right? So then I'll start comparing against that person and the other person and the other person. And I'll see all of them having things that I want to be able to do, that I want to have. And then I'll look inwards and go, oh no, I'm still not there yet. I'm not being able to do that. And as a result of that, right, I push myself to constantly work harder and work harder. And I just, even though I'm unhappy, I'll just keep trying to like work on making myself better. And at the end of the day, it's really trying to prove to myself, you know, that I can be as good as them. And as a result, I'm not happy in whatever I was doing. I was not happy in my job. I was not happy with who I am as a person. And that trap caused a lot of unhappiness. Yeah.
So what was life like then? What were you busy being concerned about when you were trapped in that?
I think it's the whole like not good enough. I'm still like not good enough. I'm still not there. Like there's this, like you said, right? There's an internal expectation. So I had an internal expectation or internal image of how I should be or how I want to be. And that image was made up by all the different people that I'm seeing who had what I want. So I don't really own the image of who I want to be, but it's made up by all this external image of people I see around me.
Yeah.
And then I say, okay, that's the model of perfectionism, being perfect that I am perceiving. Right. And I use that as a like a benchmark.
Yeah, I should be like that, right?
Yeah.
And when that person is successful, when the person has what I want, all the more that's the hope to go, Jada, you're not enough. Jada, you don't have it yet. You're far from that. And you kind of get stuck in there.
Yeah. So that's kind of like relating back to how you say there's that internal standard, right? Internal expectation of ourselves.
For those of you who have just joined us, we are now, we're talking about freedom today, but we're right now kind of unpacking where we are not free. And how do we know when we're not free? Right. So one of it will be expectations. I think that kind of self-pressure about, I'm not there yet. I'm FOMO, fear of missing out is one, or I'm slow. Oh my gosh. Like sometimes I find myself going, come on, I got to get there faster. Yeah. I compare also.
So it sounds like there's an external, we view whether we look at other people, we look at other situations, we look at things that's happening externally, and then we compare inwards. And then as a result, we get ourselves trapped in that cycle.
Yes. And sometimes there's explicit expectations too by spouses or partners, by bosses, by organizations, by clients who say, in also many words, you should be like this, or you should be able to do that, or give that. And then maybe those things push us to be less of who we truly are.
Yeah, and that feeling, when you're caught inside that feeling of that trap, right? The feeling that comes with it is not good. right? Usually the feeling inadequate, right? Feeling bitter, feeling jealous, right? Envy. I mean, this feeling of comparison sucks too, right? It's all the negative feeling that comes with being trapped.
Those of you who are on chat, can you type what are some of the things that come up for you when you are not free? How do you know you're not free? What are some of the things that you say to yourself, or some of the emotions that you feel?
Lin, what are some of that for you? If you
envy, oh gosh, I'm so, and social media like Instagram definitely adds to that. Envy, how come this person got that? How come this person is featured? Oh, how come this person got so many likes on their posts? Things like that is seriously. Okay, envy, okay, one day I would get that. One day I would be like that.
I can relate to that, the one day. Right? I mean, in my 20s, I had that. If I have enough experience, if I have enough money, I would then one day start the business that I really want to do, and then I'll quit my job. Then I'll finally go and start the business that I really want. That one day.
The sad thing is, the only day that we know of is the day that we're going to die. That's the only thing that is guaranteed. So we are living so much banking on that one day that we would get that or be that, when it's just a freaking illusion. It's a freaking illusion. So I think the first thing is to recognize that this is a human trap, where every single human falls into this illusion of one day, someday, there's a pot of gold at the end of the tunnel, at the end of the rainbow. Right? I need to slog, I need to work hard, I need to sacrifice everything, to get there. And that is not freedom. That is, you're a slave to all these external forces, all these external voices or pressures that tell us to be somebody that we're not. Right? To chase things that are actually, are they really, really important to us?
So if I were to ask, right, what are you tolerating? What do you have to compromise? So that you can eventually reach for that pot of gold at the end. What do you have to compromise, or what do you have to tolerate?
Now? In my life?
Or when you're in that trap.
What am I tolerating? Okay, so I remember when I am a mother of two very young children. One is 1.5 years old and one is 4. And when in the last 3 years, I struggled so much with transiting into this new lifestyle. And just so happens, when I got my first child, my business just doubled, and it's been growing ever since. So, there was just so much coming at me. And I remember, especially in the first 2 years, I was tolerating so much stress from both sides. Okay, so when I am doing my work, I feel guilty because I'm not with my child. When I'm with my child, I feel guilty because I'm not doing my work. And so I'm never 100% with anything. And it was, I didn't know a way out of that. I felt very trapped. I felt very, Chinese say this, 莽撞. I'm just always on the edge, okay? And I knew that I didn't want to live like that. But I found myself saying, okay, I just have to put up with this. One day, when my children are old enough, I can focus on my work and succeed. But on the other hand, one day when I'm successful and I'm earning enough money and I'm somebody somewhere having whatever, I can spend time with my children. But that's such a trap, that will never happen, because it will just never be enough. I will never be a good enough parent. I will never be successful enough, right? It is an illusion. So that was what I was tolerating. I was tolerating that lifestyle, hoping that one day it would just end. One day when the time is right, something would change.
And as a result of that toleration, right, of that being compromising yourself and tolerating, what do you miss out on, or what do you lose out on?
Definitely I lose out on being great at either, because I'm so busy being worried about the other thing. But I lose out on my sense of peace and joy. I was not I was not peaceful. I was always stressing myself up. I was always feeling like I can't be everywhere every time. So compromising peace, compromising joy. And that definitely spills over, right, into the way I parent or in the way that I work with people. Yeah.
I think that's something that parents out there would be able to relate, right? Because the whole idea of working hard is so that they can provide provide a good education for the kids, provide a good home for the kids. But then as a result of that, they don't get to also spend that quality time with the children. So that stuff is also a compromise or something that they had to tolerate.
So what is freedom then? I mean, if we're saying that freedom is not about the pot at the end of the rainbow, what is freedom?
And freedom then is about the ability to access that pot of gold at any point in time.
Wow, okay. Freedom is the ability to access that pot of gold anytime. The ability to access it anytime, as opposed to when something happens.
Yeah. Yeah. So like we said, right, the notion, or most people go through life thinking that I need to do X, Y, Z, then I will reach that pot of gold.
Yeah.
But what if that pot of gold is right in front of you already? What if at any point in time, right, you can access that? Then that is really truly the power of freedom. Right. It's not about that sacrifice or the trap that you have to go through, or that compromise or that toleration, right? It's right there. It's right there in front of you.
So it's like that saying about courage, right, Jada? Is courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is when you act in the face of fear. That's real courage. So I can relate to that in terms of freedom, where freedom is not something you win when you achieve something. Freedom is to, I don't know, it's the ability to feel that way despite all the stress and the pressure and everybody telling us to be somebody.
So it's like a state of mind. Freedom is a state of mind in a way, right? Like if you can tap into that space of freedom, that state of mind of being free.
Wow. Okay. So give me an example of when you have tapped into that.
Well, that's a great question to get me thinking. Okay, so while I think,
what do you think? There are people chatting. Okay, hi guys. Oh, nice to see everybody. Nita, I see you. Jeremy, hi again. Harry, so happy to have you. Karina, hello. Karina says definitely can relate. Yeah, to the parenting part, I think. So Jeremy says acceptance. Harry says it's freedom. Freedom equals gratitude plus presence. Ah, good stuff coming up. What else? So Jada, you're supposed to.
I'm in deep thoughts.
Oh, sorry.
I'm like, okay, while you're writing, I'm like, when was the last time I felt freedom?
Yeah. Guys, when was the last time you felt freedom? When was the last time you felt freedom? Okay, and not sort of the huge, bungee jumping, skydiving kind of freedom, but the freedom amidst a very busy, demanding life.
I don't know if this relates or this makes sense. Freedom for me, right? At least for me, or what my idea of freedom is about. It's about being present in the now, right? When I'm really, really, truly free, or when I felt that sense of freedom, I'm actually really present to what's happening in front of me and what's happening around me. So I notice, like, whenever I'm in the trap, if I'm in the trap, so let's go back to the trap, right? So if I'm in that trap, I know that I'm unhappy. I know that I'm constantly comparing and looking forward to having an expectation of how the future should be, having an expectation of how things should be, or I'm very unhappy because things are not going according to how it used to be, or things are not, or I'm not feeling the same kind of happiness or excitement that I used to feel. So there was a comparison to the past and also an expectation of the future. So whenever I'm in that dangling in between that past and future, right, then that's when I know that I'm not feeling that freedom. So when I manage to, like, sometimes in moments of brilliance, right, I'm able to step out of that dangling, and in that moment of being in the now, when I'm not thinking about past, neither am I thinking about future, then that's when I really feel free. That's my
I'm smiling because you said tongling and I'm like,
I mean, like, okay, so gosh,
dongling? I don't know.
not the way to say it.
Art of dongling. Jada has invented the art of. Okay, Mate says, I feel freedom when I can accept negative thoughts. Oh, I love that. When you can accept negative thoughts. I feel freedom, Mate, you just triggered a thought. So I'm somebody who's sort of quite highly driven by acceptance and approval, and I don't like conflict. But I've recently found, with courage and with standing up, we spoke about all that stuff in the first 2 episodes. And I find freedom when I can put my foot down and not feel anything. I don't feel righteous. I don't feel like, wow, Lin, you just did something. Like it's a non-issue. Like, okay, done, said it, all right, we put it one side and whatever happens, happens lah. But this is the truth for me. Oh, that feeling is so good. To not be bothered. Yeah. Jeremy says, accepting that there's no need for me to be perfect or all good and well all the time. All these perfectionist people. Oh, it's I think a lot of people can relate to that. Okay, so I have something for everybody. I compiled a couple of quotes, and there is something that all these wise philosophers have found out about freedom. Okay, so let's dissect that and see what is the thing in common. What is freedom really about? How do we achieve or assess freedom? Okay, so I hope all of you can see my slides. Okay, so Jada, can you see? Right,
yep.
If you can see, please give a thumbs up, everybody. Okay. All right, so Karl Marx says, necessity is blind until it becomes conscious. Freedom is a consciousness of necessity. Okay. All right, that's the first one. Okay, we've got 5 to go through. So as we're going through the 5 quotes, I want you to notice what is the commonality they all have about what they're saying about freedom. Okay, the next one. Hey. Okay, Jean-Jacques Rousseau. Man is born free, and everywhere he is in chains. One thinks himself the master of others and still remains a greater slave than they. So this is about when we think we are a master of others, or maybe external events, we actually become a slave to those things. Yeah, when we are actually born free. Rudolf Rocker, freedom is not an abstract philosophical concept. Thank you, Rudolf, for reinforcing what we're saying today. But the vital, concrete possibility of every human being to bring to full development all the powers, capacities, and talents with which nature has endowed onto them and turn them into social account. Epictetus. Freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control. Okay, last one. Jiddu Krishnamurti. Freedom from the desire for an answer is essential to the understanding of the problem. Okay, what does that show us? Okay, let me.
Are you able to see what's the common thread that's lying between all those 5 quotes there?
I'll share what I see though. I think reading through all that, what has, okay, so Jiddu says it the clearest because it sounds the most practical. Freedom from the desire for an answer is essential to understanding the problem. Is that not detachment? Like you stop expecting, you let go of the outcome, you let go of the notion that there should be an outcome, and then things happen. Let's test it against, okay, well, freedom is the only goal worthy in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control. Definitely. right? The one about one thinks himself the master of others and still remains the greatest slave. And we become slaves when we think that we can control other people or outcomes or external factors to us. So it's detachment. Freedom comes when there's detachment.
Sounds like it's also like a letting go, right? Like you have to let go of like of how you think things or to control and the past. And then when that happens, the detachment sits in.
Yeah. It's easier said than done though. Detachment. I mean, sometimes whatever we're intending for is just, it's so important to us. Right? It's so urgent, or it's so much a part of us that it's really difficult to detach. Yeah. So how exactly do we do that?
That's like the $1 million question, right? How do you assess that pot of gold at any point of time you want without having to go through the trap and the struggles?
Well, if there's one thing that we have found out so far, right, is that what causes us a lot of the suffering and the trappedness is when we become very attached to external things. Right? When we want something, when we desire something that's external to us, when we want to control an outcome, whether in business or relationships. Like imagine how many times we've gone through this, right? We see that person, that girl, that boy, oh, we want that, oh, if only I could, right? And then we want to control the person. I mean, God, for some people it happens to their relationship right now. Like you should be this kind of husband or this kind of wife, this kind of friend. And it's all just too much externalizing. So when we say, a very common one, I so many people, we've worked with so many people since we started coaching donkey years ago. And it's so common. I want to be rich. I want to be a millionaire. We always hear all these money goals. And when I hit, when I'm a millionaire or when I can earn $10,000 a month or whatever, I'll be able to have this or that. But the truth is all these things external to us don't make up who we are. We exist regardless of whether these things exist or not. Even if the $1 million doesn't exist, hey, I exist. Even if the perfect spouse doesn't exist, I exist. Even if the car doesn't exist, I exist. Right? Regardless of these things, we exist. So actually what we need to look at is to go within and look at what exists within us right now. Okay, our truths, our values, our gifts, our dreams. Because these are the things, the internal things are the things that we can control, right?
Wow. So are you saying that if we take a look inside within ourselves and see what's there, then by assessing that and by tapping into that, then we are able to begin getting a sense of the freedom?
Yes, because these are the only things that we can control. We can only control ourselves. I think we all know that. We've heard that so many times. You can only control yourself. You can't control other people. You can't control other things. But hey, we never unpacked what are these. What do we mean by control ourselves? There's so many different parts of ourselves, right? So, okay, Jada, if I would ask you, what internally can you connect to?
As in like an ability or a value or?
Yes, something that you have that you actually can control. Yeah, an ability.
Wow, the first thing that came to my mind is the ability to love. Okay, I mean, it sounds cheesy, right? But it's like the ability to connect and embrace like a stranger and to be able to love a person for who he or she is. I think that's something that I have.
Okay, I have the ability to speak, just using speech to connect to people, to express my love. I mean, to tell my children I love them, to coach. I'm so thankful for having a voice, and being able to share verbally, to connect.
I have an ability to laugh at myself.
Oh, that's
to not take myself too seriously and to laugh at myself.
Mm-hmm.
That's something that I can tap into.
Um,
Something on your list.
I have an ability to step back, see things from a different perspective, to be wise about things. Yeah, I think that has helped me in many situations in my life. So we have this, okay, so ability to love, ability to speak, ability to enjoy, to think, to
connect,
to
speak our truths, to stand up for what we believe in,
to be creative.
Ourselves. Yes, to be creative.
Yes. Our ability to make choices. Also, all these things lie within us. It already exists. So the question is, are we exercising these rights? We cannot control what is external to us, but we can control what's inside. So are we, exercising our rights? I think when I think back to the moments I get very stressed up and very in my head about, and I feel that kind of trappedness that I feel, I actually forget about myself. I kind of tune out, and I'm so caught up with the anger or the frustration that I forget that I actually have a choice too. I have an ability to make a choice. I have an ability to step out. I have an ability to change the way I feel about it. Sometimes it's so real.
Yeah, I totally can relate to what you just said, like the ability to change how you feel about certain things, right? So a lot of times we're just so caught up with whatever's happening, right, that we just give and lose. I mean, we lose power to all the external stuff, right? So when we begin to exercise these rights, then we have the power to begin creating the reality as we wish it to be, right? Or creating how we want life or this moment to be.
Yeah. When we recognize what we have now within us, we can control those. We can wield power from that. Okay, so we like to hear from everybody. List down the abilities that you guys have. List down the abilities you have, as many as you can. So if you're joining us for the first time, every episode we will have some kind of activity for you to sort of get involved in. So please type in chat. We want to see just anything that comes to mind. What is the ability that you have? Because these are the things that you can use to change how you feel about things and access that kind of freedom to you. And we will very soon be talking about what freedom is for you, okay? Because we have a special guest coming on, and she's actually in the waiting room right now, which is a little bit behind time. But we wanted to unpack, what are everyday ways that we can access freedom. So what we've spoken about so far, maybe we do a quick recap, okay, Jada? We've talked about the lie and the trap that we grew up in, that we only get freedom as freedom is the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. And in order to access that pot of gold, we need to do all these things. We need to be this kind of person. We need to chase all these things so that we can, whether be rich, be smart, be known, be respected, be powerful, then freedom will come. And that's super tiring, and we're all old by the time that happens. And as we are aging, we are unhappy and we're suffering. Okay, we've seen so much of that happening. So then after that, what we say is, okay, how do we access freedom then on an everyday basis, right? Because it is there, it exists. I truly believe that freedom is our birthright. Look at kids. Look at how free they can be. What happened to adults? It's not that freedom is out of reach. It is actually within us. We just don't know how to reach into that.
We've forgotten about it.
We have forgotten about it. We think that we get it from somebody else. If we marry the right person, we get it. And then the next thing we went on to was then, how do we achieve freedom? How do we get freedom is to detach from
expectations, the need to control, the desire for like whatever we imagine the future to be.
Yeah.
Right? If we let go of that, then we really are able to begin tapping into freedom. And it's actually all within us.
That's what we're left with. It's just us and our abilities. Right? And we use that to then create the kind of freedom and the kind of life that we want. Harry says gratitude and positivity. Those are his abilities. Very, very nice. I mean, powerful stuff. I mean, those two things, I can see how those two things would have gotten you through so much of probably what you encounter in your life, challenges, stuff like that. What are your abilities? So I hope you guys think about that. Do you think it's time to bring on our special guest?
Yes, let's do that.
Okay.
This is the first time we have a special guest.
And it was very kind of surprise element last minute, by the way. I was just, she was making some comments about the post on freedom that I posted on Instagram. And she was sort of rambling certain things. And I said, oh God, this is so good. You need to come on the show tonight. So here she is. Okay, so I'm going to admit her. I think she's a little bit nervous. There we go.
Hi, Namita.
Hi.
Hello. Hi, Namita. Thanks for joining us all the way from India.
Yeah, I'm so excited to be here. It's quite a spot that Lin put me in, saying that, hey, can you come online? So I was like, okay, I could try. So I hope I can help. Yeah.
You certainly can. So maybe you want to just give a 1 or 2 sentence introduction, who you are, what you do.
Okay. So I live in India. I'm a coach as well, trained in by Lin herself, and I'm a happiness coach. And I work primarily with executives and leaders, and it's about finding your happiness through art or through coaching, but it's essentially just living your truth, finding your potential and living it every moment. And then, well, happiness just becomes a habit and not something that you seek. So that's what I do. I'm a coach, I'm a psychologist, and I'm somebody who's trying to make the world happy at a small step at a time.
I love that. Happiness coach. I just love what you just said. Also, like making the world a happier place, one small steps at a time.
Yeah, isn't she the right person? Because happiness is so much like freedom. In fact, why do people pursue freedom?
Because they want to be happy.
Yeah,
right. They think it's gonna make them happy, but actually, I think it's a norm, or it's becoming more understood that happiness is a choice, right? Now we're saying freedom is a choice too.
Yeah, so Namita, we were talking about how if we begin to tap into that ability that we have inside us, whether is it a value or your ability to connect, your ability to make choices, your truth, right? Then you begin to once you're able to tap into those ability, those things that's right inside you, then you begin to tap into or you have the power to begin building the reality that you want. Right. And that's where true freedom comes. So if I were to ask you, Namita, what are the ways, if you can share with us or share with everyone that's watching right now, what are some of the ways that, you can deliberately tap into freedom in your life?
I think freedom is about essentially a choice, right? Because what happens is, as I was talking to Lin today,
oh no, cliffhanger. And she was talking to Lin today, and then what? I also want to know. Oh no, Namita. Oh dear. Okay, what happened is what we were talking about on Instagram was how what Namita brought up was how everybody has their own brand of freedom. I love how she used that word. In other words, our own way.
We have this image. You Google freedom
to be free. Oh, hi, you're back. Okay.
I'm so sorry. I don't know what happened.
It's all right. So go on. So you were talking to Lin, and then what?
Oh yeah. So I was talking to Lin. So when we were discussing this, and what happened was, because imagine this: you Google freedom, you always have somebody running, right? Or there's somebody flying, or there's just wings involved, right? There's always an idea of movement when it comes to freedom, which makes sense, right? Because you can't have freedom if you're bound, right? But through a lot of work that I've done with even clients, I've realized that freedom is about actually just finding your space. And that space doesn't have to be movement. It can be inaction too, right? So to give you an example, freedom for me is when I'm not required to do anything for anybody. That 1 hour, I can do what I choose, right? That's freedom. There is no accountability to it. There's no, it's not, it doesn't have to have any expectations involved, right? So one of the questions that I tend to ask is, what is it that would just make you immensely happy? You know, that moment where, like childlike joy, right? Like you're filled up with happiness. What gives you that happiness? Lin?
I love connecting to nature. I love connecting to people. That's why I'm a coach. I find it, connecting to the wind, connecting to the sunshine, connecting to the client. It's just me and that thing. I find so much freedom in that.
Yes, absolutely, right. And I mean, what about you, Jada?
Wow. I mean, as Lin said about connecting to nature, what's coming to my mind is like when I'm painting, right? This is something that I began to do this year. And when I'm in that space of painting and just putting colors onto the paper, there's nothing else that's happening. I don't care what's happening outside the room. I don't care what's happening, out there. It's just me and putting those colors onto the paper. I love that space. That freedom in creation.
Freedom and creation, right? So the idea of freedom is when you're working, whether it's freedom, whether it's happiness, as it's all connected. It's about, so I read somewhere that it says freedom is completeness, where there's no lack of anything, right? So what completes you? That's essentially the question. That's the trick. What in this present mindful moment completes you? And that is your definition of freedom, right? Because painting is important too. So for me, when it comes to freedom, you leave me in nature and I feel completely free. And when I paint, I feel completely free. So I can identify luckily both with Lin and Jada, but at the same time, there are those moments where I just do not wish to talk to anybody, or I want to pick up a book. That is choice, right? In that moment, I feel complete as a reader, as a painter, as somebody who wants to walk. So it's essentially answering that one question: what makes me complete? And a lot of times you get your answer because it's something, you can't be complete if your soul is unhappy, right? So it's all linked, right? It's not about expectations. It's as you mentioned, it's not about detachment. It's not about those traps, but it's just a simple question: what makes me complete? And I think most of us get the answer there.
Well, I'm also hearing when you say what makes me complete is when we are fully present in something that we do.
Yes. Yes.
So I mean, even if it's a task that we don't necessarily like. I think when I've realized that when I can just shut the bitchy voice or the whingy voices up and just do it, and it's just you and that thing, you're also free, right? You're free from the negative relationship or the hold that this thing has on you. That's also freedom. Freedom doesn't also always have to feel good necessarily.
No, absolutely. I mean, there are so many people who I think through this whole circuit breaker and, through the pandemic have said that washing vessels can be mindful, and and it's not the most joyful task, is it? But it literally does keep you so present, right? So it's the idea of flow. It's all kind of a whole link, right? There's completeness, there's happiness, there's flow, there's freedom. All of it is essentially saying the same thing, that look inwards, ask yourself these simple questions, which we've forgotten to ask ourselves, right? It's like imagination. A child can imagine the craziest things, but as an adult, we'd be like, no, the sky is blue. It cannot be pink. We've put limitations on ourselves, right? So I think the tricks that I'm talking about are these very simple questions. It's linked to mindfulness, essentially. Just be mindful, be present, and ask yourself, A, what completes me? B, am I doing this without, any external outcome to it? Right? So yes.
I love what you just said. And so if we may ask the people that's watching right now, right, what are some of the ways that you can do to begin tapping into that freedom, to get that sense of happiness and that completeness, where you are in that space where there's nothing else but you and what you're just doing in that moment? What are some of the ways that you've already done, perhaps you've already done it before, but you just didn't realize?
Yeah, because what we're saying so far is, while we cannot control external things, we can control the way that we want to relate to something. And that's where our freedom lies. It's the ability to turn it on. And it's difficult, something, okay, well, to Namita's point, we can't find the switch after so many years of not activating it. Now the first step is, okay, where is the switch? And the second step is, can you just keep switching it on? Some people do gratitude, right? You mentioned mindfulness, but it's wonderful to see more and more people doing gratitude exercises right now, because I think when your mind is in gratitude, you also own that this is what I have, this is what I've created, this is me, and what I have now. It's no longer about my lack. I don't have it, I don't have that. And the moment you get into that, we want to control it, but the fact is that we can't.
Yeah. Can I lend another angle to freedom also? For me, a big part of it also comes in the freedom to express what I really feel, right? I think a lot of times we hold back our thoughts, we hold back our own, what we really feel inside, because we are afraid of what people might think, we're afraid of like how people will feel if we express those things out. But having the freedom to communicate and to express what's really going on inside of myself, I think that's also a sense of freedom, that I don't have to hold back, neither do I have to like censor what I'm saying, right?
So how does that affect the way you coach? So you tapping into this freedom, this Jada's freedom, right? How does that then influence the way you coach?
I think that's a good question. Having honesty, right? I'm not really worried about how the other person will perceive or how the other person thinks that a coach should behave. But if I see that a conversation needs to be had, I can be honest and tell him or her what I'm really feeling, right? And also, then in another sense, right, the other freedom that a coach needs to have also then is the freedom from having certain prejudices, certain opinions, certain assumptions of how the other person you're coaching needs to be. And that itself is also freedom. You're free from the expectation of how the other person should be.
Namita, what about you?
Freedom comes in so many ways.
Yeah, what's your version of freedom and how does that influence the way you coach?
I think in my version of freedom, it's about just being present. In the sense, I agree with with Jada a lot about the emotion part of it, right? Because as a psychologist also, I'm very mindful of the fact that emotions need space and sometimes they need silence, right? I think as a coach, there's a fine line that you dance around between silence and actually expressing what you feel. So when it comes to freedom, it's in coaching, I think it essentially for me is about being very mindful of what the person's resonating with, right? Because I've had sessions where the person just wants to talk, right? And and all I have to do is just patiently say that I understand, I get it, right? Because the reason why that is happening is because they felt that sense of security and freedom to say what they wanted to without somebody counteracting or giving an argument saying that, hey, I think this is how it should be, right? In that sense, it's a freedom of expression by holding a space for the client, right? The second way I think freedom does come in is where I agree with Jada. Sometimes you do have to share how it resonates within you and make it more of a conversation rather than just let the person talk, right? So it's very closely linked to, I would say, being very present in that moment, because there's a lot the person's telling you in what they need, right? There's always that hopeful look, give me the answer to my problems. Or, there's always that look that, are you judging me? There's a very fine line there. And freedom, it's easier to demonstrate it when you just pay attention to that slight flicker on the face, the cringe in the eyes, the hesitation in the, it's all in the subtleties. So
yeah. And if you're too caught up in yourself, you can't access all these things.
Yeah. So I think for me, in my coaching sessions, I think as with my clients, it's always being, this is their time and I am going to be here fully present and just be here, because there's a lot of conversations that the person doesn't get to have outside, right? Because
Yeah.
there they are a relationship to somebody, right? There's always a relationship that I'm talking to my boss, there are expectations. I'm talking to my spouse, there are expectations. I'm talking to my child. So there's always that, as Jada puts it, also there's like veneer comes in. Oh, I'm talking to this person, my language, my words and everything, right? In your coaching space, they can be who they want them to be, right? So it's that what I'm talking about in my, I guess, loose interpretation of what freedom is in a coaching session. Yeah.
That's what I love about training, like being a coach and training to be a coach, because you have to hold that empty space for a person to be free. It kind of brushes up on you too. You get used to turning that switch on and off for ourselves.
Yeah.
Harry said, freedom is cutting through noise. Yes.
Oh, I definitely agree with that.
And then the question is, what are the abilities that you have to be able to cut through noise?
Yeah.
So I think we can begin to wrap up. There was a lot of ideas there for everybody, in terms of what is freedom to us and how we can keep accessing that by tapping into what's within instead of relying on what's outside of us. Anything else, Jada, that we should sort of close off with?
No, I think we are at a good place, right? So as you begin to tap into those abilities and get really present to that, then that's also where your power to real freedom comes in.
Yes. So I hope that out of today's episode, you are more aware of the times you are not free, what kind of feelings and thoughts come up, and being able to, flip that switch to turn on the detachment and to consciously wield and activate an ability that you have to turn the situation around. Whether it's gratitude or fun or choice or expression or something. And that's where we can live very free and happy moments every single day in our daily life. Thank you, Namita, for joining us today and for sharing all the stuff. Oh gosh, that
Thank you so much for having me.
Ideas that you have as a happiness coach. Thanks, Jada.
Please continue making the world a happier place. We need more people like you.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for having me here. This was quite interestingly fun. Thanks, Lin, for pushing me into it. This was fun, yes. And thank you, everybody, for patiently listening to me babble.
Happy babble is okay. All right, guys. So we'll see you same time next week on Tuesday, Down the Rabbit Hole with Lin and Jada. We're talking about pertinent topics in life so that you can use this chance to do some inner work on yourself as a coach. So stay tuned.
And if you've got ideas or things that you...
Yeah.
Oh, I was going to say, and if you've got any pertinent topics that you would want us to unpack together, drop that into the comment box so that we keep bring up topics that's relevant.
Okay, thanks guys. Good
night. See you guys next week. Bye.
Bye.